Vanche Kodesh Tiyunli, you should be a holy nation to me. With these words, the Torah delineates the requirements of a Jew. One of them is Basa Besad de Trefel Osochlu. If you have an animal that was torn asunder, a sheep that was killed in a field, don't eat it, it's a trefa. Lakelav Tashlichun Oso, throw it to the dogs. Rashi is bothered by why throw it to the dogs. If we're not allowed to eat a trefa, go do with it whatever you want. Go use it for hide, go use it for anything you're interested. Why do you have to specifically throw it to the dogs? Says Rashi, this is to teach us a principle that Hashem does not hold back reward from any of his biryas, from any creation. The dogs are receiving their rewards. When the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, lo yechratz kelav l'shono, no single dog barked. Because no dog barked, there was an added element of Kiddush Hashem. The entire Jewish nation left, and there was silence because the dogs were participants in the Kiddush Hashem. Therefore, the rewards are given to them for eternity. They are to be the ones to receive the trefa. Any animal torn asunder is given to the dogs as their reward. This Rashi is quite difficult to understand when we focus on the fact that a dog is an animal. An animal does not have free will. An animal is not capable of deciding yes to bark, not to bark. As a matter of fact, what's even more imperative is the fact that Hashem promised Moshe that when the Jewish nation leaves, no single dog will bark. Meaning to say, it was not in the capacity of the dog to choose to bark or not to bark. It was directed by Hashem. Therefore, what possible schar, what possible reward is given to an animal who against its will did something, and there doesn't seem to be any choice, and therefore there doesn't seem to be any reward that's warranted. And I believe the answer to this question is predicated on understanding our role in creation and Hashem's role. And let me sort of bring this out with an interesting observation. We accept one of the basic tenets of our religion is the fact that Hashem controls everything. Hashem created, orchestrates, and is involved in every activity on the planet. What that means to say in plain simple language is you cannot harm me, you cannot help me. If my time is up, there's nothing that you can do to help me. If in fact it's not my time, if I was slated on the previous Rosh Hashanah to have a year of life, there is nothing that you can do to change the outcome. You are powerless. I am directly under Hashem's control. With that being said, let's ask the following philosophical question. Imagine for a moment that Reuven pulls out a gun and shoots Shimon dead. Why can't Reuven simply say, wait a minute, if I succeeded, doesn't that tell us quite clearly that it was the will of God? If it wasn't the will of God that Shimon should die, I never would have succeeded. So obviously Hashem wanted him to die. Why are you considering me a murderer? The answer to that question is outcomes and intentions. The outcome of that event was pre-slated, meaning to say, if Reuven succeeded in killing Shimon, that means on the previous Rosh Hashanah, Shimon was slated to die. But the question is how? Was he going to die by being hit by a car, by a telephone pole falling on him, or was Shimon allowed to be the one to pull the trigger on the gun? If Shimon actually decided to do it, even though that event would have happened anyway, Shimon would have died in a violent manner, the reality is Shimon was given the opportunity to pull that trigger, and therefore the outcome is attributed to him. Even though he was not really the determinant of the outcome, the reality is that the outcome is credited to him because that's how Hashem allows the human being to have some control, some reward or punishment for what he does on the planet. At the end of the day, all outcomes are directed by Hashem, but if I choose to be the one to bring it about, that outcome is credited to me, and that in fact seems to be the answer to the dogs over here. At the end of the day, through these dogs came a bigger Kiddush Hashem. Granted, they were not intentional. Granted, they did not think about it. But the reality is, through them, that outcome came about, and that outcome is attributed to them. Normally, depending on your intention, will determine how much credit you're given. If you fully intend it, you're given full credit. But at the end of the day, if an outcome came about through you, you have a connection to it, and there's an element of reward that's waiting for you. Here, the chiddush is that even though the dogs are almost against their will, but at the end of the day, something came out from them, and because of that, they're credited, it's rewarded to them, it goes on their scorecard. And this is a tremendous insight into understanding the effects of a human on the good and on the bad. If I create something in this world and it affects other people, even if it affects other people that I never realized it would affect, even if I never intended it, if I bring good into the world and people learn from that, if I'm scrupulously honest in business and people adopt my way, even though I didn't intend for them to learn from me, even though I wasn't aware that they were witnessing it, if they change because of me, it's credited to me because the outcome comes back to me. And on the flip side, if I end up being the type of person who creates a chilul Hashem, and people learn from me the opposite, to be dishonest or to be act in a cruel manner, every event that comes about on some level is attributed to me because that outcome came about for me. This reality that while our intentions are usually the area of focus, the outcomes are key and critical, is a tremendous understanding in terms of the responsibility of the human and what a human being is capable of, and at the end of the day, to what extent he's held accountable.